All right, welcome everybody. I'm just going to wait a few minutes here as the participants are going up. I'm going to kind of track that and formally kick off when that number stops growing. So we had about 500 registrants for the session, and we usually get about half who registered, but we're already ahead of that. All right, still slowly going up, but it's 5:02, so I will kick off. Wait a minute, we have some of our residents on board too as well, writing comments. Welcome everyone. Well, I want to welcome everybody to the Meet the Chair webinar for the University of Michigan Department of Surgery. My name is Justin Dimick, and I am the current chair here. And just a few points about our department, just to set the stage in terms of what we're going to do tonight and why this is probably so big. So the Department of Surgery hosts a lot of different training programs, and we have 7 clinical sections in our department, and that represents transplant, pediatrics, general surgery, and all the general surgery specialties, oromaxillofacial surgery, plastic surgery. And so that's why there's probably so many people on the webinar. And so we're going to kind of talk about broadly the Department of Surgery and how we help the different clinical sections and the different clinical training programs achieve their goals, and help the trainees achieve their goals. So we're not going to talk about general surgery, we're not talking about cardiac surgery. We're talking about how the Department of Surgery facilitates the growth of the faculty and therefore the residents across all of those. I like to think of my job as a department chair as kind of the glue that holds all those sections and all the training programs together. And my job literally is to add value to you all as trainees if you come here, and to add value to the faculty to make them successful so that you guys have clinical and research and excellent education substrate to learn from and develop yourself. So the way we're going to conduct this tonight, we have an hour together, and we are going to, it's a question and answer format. You'll notice there are some people already up here on the screen with me, and we have, they're waving hello. Two of them are the Department of Surgery staff who work with me, Aaron LaRoe and Teddy Engler, and they kind of help organize the event tonight, and we'll be helping move people around and things like that as we ask more questions. But the other people up here are students who we kind of selected, who gave representative questions, partly because we had to switch to a webinar format because there were so many attendees, and I wanted to make sure that I wasn't up here by myself just talking into the void. So we brought some students up here in advance who asked questions that mirrored a lot of the questions that you all asked, and we're going to work through those. But I want to leave time at the end to take some additional questions in the chat box, and then we'll kind of pull you up here to ask the question in person as well. So kind of be thinking about your questions. A lot of you submitted. I think we had 300 or 400 questions submitted in the registration. So think about your question, put it in the chat box, and we'll kind of pull you up there. Somebody's asking in the chat box, do we see you all? And the answer is no. We only see the 7 students and my 2 staff who are up on the screen with me. Like I said, there's just too many registrants to see everybody at one time. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself, since this is a Meet the Chair. As I think I mentioned, I've been the chair here at the University of Michigan for 2 years. I trained here as well, so education here at the University of Michigan in surgery is really important to me. I'm a product of the system. I trained here and then was on faculty for my entire professional career. Some facts about me: I am a minimally invasive and bariatric surgeon by training, so I do laparoscopic surgery. As a general surgeon, I have a fairly general surgery practice, still clinically active. I have my research laboratory is in health services research. I study variations in performance, healthcare policy, and the values that I pitched when I became chair, that I put forward, was that I believe in talent development is a big part of what I do. I consider myself the mentor in chief. And I think you'll hear a lot about the programs we have in place are to develop your talent and the talent of our faculty and help you achieve your unique goals. That's a really important value to me. Another one is strategic deployment of that talent. So I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can develop and deploy the talent we have in our department to help people achieve their goals and to help our organization achieve their goals. Another one is collegiality. I almost didn't go into surgery because I fell in love with the craft of surgery, but not the behavior of surgeons. And that's one of the reasons I chose this program. Several of you asked that question, why did I choose Michigan? That was it. It was a place that had clinical excellence and a collegial environment. It's really important to me. And I have said many times, and if any of you have heard me speak about this before, I know some of you have, I like to say that we're trying to change the culture of surgery here at Michigan and beyond. Michigan is a place that trains leaders that go on out into the world. And if you come here and train, there's a good chance you'll go out in the world to lead. And I want you to go out to lead and help us change that culture. That's really important to us. So those are kind of the cultural values. The last one is that you probably heard about if you follow us on social media or read our blog or have visited our website, is that we believe that diversity and inclusion lead to excellence. And that's just an uncompromising value that we hold. And that kind of follows from the collegiality and collaboration, but essential to who we are and what we stand for. So that's kind of my introductory comments about the department and me as the chair and my vision for leadership. So let's get into some of your questions. So I think the first question is coming from Erin. Help me out. I lost my email.
I think it's me.
Yes, you guys know. Who is it?
Yeah, it's me, Jihan.
Oh, Jihan. Okay, great. Perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jihan. So my question is, what qualities make training at the University of Michigan unique?
Yeah, thank you, Jihan, for that question. And this is really the question, right? Like, why Michigan? And I think, so first way I answer this is by saying, why are we not unique, right? Like, what do we have that most other places that you're looking at also have, right? We have a big, busy hospital that's highly ranked in U.S. News and World Report. We do really complicated things. A lot of places do that, right? And that's really important to you from like a depth and breadth of clinical experience, right? Like we have that, which is important. I think some of the things that are unique, the two things that we have that I think are more unique are the academic development opportunities we have. We have really robust research portfolios in health services research. We have a Center for Health Outcomes and Policy, basic science, basic and translational research. We have a Center for Basic and Translational Science. Education research is important to us. We have a Center for Surgical Training and Research. And not only that, we have a vice chair for resident mentorship who helps you kind of select a major and decide which one of those academic training programs to pursue, and minors. We have minors like global surgery, healthcare administration. Some people want to get involved in that. We have a healthcare administration scholars program. And so it's about crafting a major and a minor to develop you outside the OR, right? I think you're going to be excellent as a clinician in the OR, but developing you outside the OR is something I think we do uniquely well. The other thing I think is just the culture. We have a culture very, very steeped in mentorship, right? It is very much about mentorship. The senior faculty mentor the junior faculty. The junior faculty mentor the residents. Senior residents mentor the junior residents. The junior residents mentor the senior students. The senior students mentor the junior students, right? It's just part of who we are. And I think my job is to make sure that there's resources and infrastructure to make sure that everybody can have success, right? We have an abundance mentality. Like we think there's enough success for everybody, so we don't need to fight over who's going to be first author on the papers, because we all have enough papers, right? It's one of those things where the competition, I think, can fall away when you have an environment that encourages mentorship and an abundance mentality. So those are kind of things I could probably talk for an hour on that topic, but that's an excellent question. And there's some other questions that are related. So you guys can remember who was next.
Next is Justine.
Justine.
Hi. So thank you so much, Dr. Dimick, for answering that so well. I have a somewhat similar question. You spoke to what makes training at Michigan unique. but what do you feel makes your residents unique at Michigan?
So this gets into a little bit of how we interview residents. And so I asked 2 questions of all the people that we interview here, and I'll tell you what they are so you can prepare. Because the questions that I ask people are, what is your career vision? And that isn't necessarily what clinical specialty because you may change if you're in general surgery, but even if you're a cardiac surgery trainee, you may not know exactly. You may do congenital, you may do structural heart, right? It really is about like how you're going to have impact on the world, right? And so I ask you about your career vision, and then the key question is, why would Michigan provide a return on the environment? Like, how would you prepare a return on environment? Meaning, like, we have this, what I think is a rich environment, and we can help you develop your potential. And so how does your career vision fit into taking advantage of the resources here to develop you? And so I think one of the things that is unique about our residents is they have very ambitious career visions. They really want to impact the world, and it can be in many different ways, right? It can be, I still remember interviewing somebody who said, I want to cure diabetes through my basic science, right? That great idea, right? And that resident is now in faculty somewhere after finishing and is pursuing that, right? Creating little beta cell organoids that secrete insulin, right? And that's like fantastic. I had another trainee who's current resident, Valeria Valbuena, who some of you may know, and our residents who are on the call know her. And her career vision was that she said she wants to become a chair of surgery so she can help little girls that look like her grow up to be surgeons, right? Powerful career vision, very different, all right? But so I think one thing that makes our residents unique is they have ambitious, impactful career visions, and they're a return on our environment, right? If they come here, we can help them do those things, right? And so I think that's what makes them unique. And that's why, like, some of the questions people submitted were things of like, oh, what inspires you on a daily basis? Like, that's it, right? Like being around a group of people who really want to make the world a better place, whether it's through serving patients, diversifying our workforce, curing disease, like all those things are why I love my job, right? And why even with everything going on in the world, you can always hold on to the fact that you get to come to work and work with these incredible people every day.
Justine, you had one more question?
Yes, thank you so much for that response. My next question is, as chair, how do you see your department growing and evolving over the next 5 years?
Yeah, so when does the COVID pandemic end? Is that the next year, or do you have that pegged in for 2? It's an interesting question because a lot of strategic and operational things, I think that there are kind of currently on hold. But I think that there's a couple ways to answer that, right? I think our department, as it is relevant to you, is kind of growing all the time. And because of that, we are kind of expanding, and our clinical footprint grows. So from like a clinical, operational, and strategic perspective, the University of Michigan Health System will continue to transition from being a big hospital in Ann Arbor to a statewide network, right? And so for you all, you guys aren't going to go outside of probably this, the main campus here, the VA across the street, and maybe a few ambulatory centers we have, and a community hospital that are all like right here in Ann Arbor or very close. But I think that's just what's happening in healthcare dynamics from a healthcare policy perspective, the mergers and acquisitions. So it's important for you guys to understand how that works, because you're going to go out to be healthcare leaders and understand that. So that's probably one way that will change, is that they will have kind of different phenotypes of faculty and different educational opportunities as we continue to grow and expand. I think from the perspective of resident education, I think we have a really good blueprint of how to do things in an exceptional way, and I kind of laid out some of that with academic development, mentorship, our diversity, equity, inclusions programs. Some of you may have heard me talk about the Michigan Promise before. Raise your hand if you've heard about the Michigan Promise. I don't know. Right? So there's a graphic on the wall right there. See that? if you go to our website, you'll read about the Michigan Promise. The Michigan Promise is a portfolio of faculty development and resident development activities. And so we started this a few years ago. And so I'd say the next 5 years, we'll fully start to realize that vision and really push our environment towards inclusivity is a forever journey, and we're on the beginning of that journey, but I think we'll make substantial progress on both diversity and an inclusive environment in 5 years. We'll continue to innovate. All of our clinical programs are on the cutting edge, right? Like I said, we're a big, highly ranked hospital, but we'll continue to push clinical innovation so that we're still at the edge in all of our different clinical domains. And I think from an education perspective, I think there's a specific question on this. So I think somebody had a question on education innovation. So I will hold that for now, but I'll just say that we have a lot of kind of interesting and things going on in advancing all year education and are involved in a lot of pilot programs with competency-based education. So I think we'll continue to move towards and leading in those domains and progressive autonomy and competency-based advancement.
Up next is Nikki.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was wondering if Michigan has a formalized system for soliciting and responding to resident concerns during their training.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and something that we thought a lot about. Right, there are a lot of different reporting systems in a health system for different groups. Right, medical students we have a very rigorous medical student one, so I get a lot of data from that. Our staff have one, which is also very rigorous, and I get all the data on this. And the residents didn't have a formal program. Right, it was more ad hoc. We obviously have the annual surveys and things like that, but those are kind of too high level. And so it tended to be, when residents encountered difficulties, whether it was personal or environment difficulties, we didn't have a great solution. So it was one of my priorities when I became chair to put one in place. And so we just are now starting to roll it out, and it has an acronym. It's put together by Teddy, so I should probably have Teddy tell you a little about it. But it's called MAPS, which stands for
Michigan Action Progress System.
Yes. And I don't know, do you want to say 2 or 3 words about it, Teddy, since you're here?
Sure. So the Michigan Action Progress System is there's an online portal where anybody can go online and submit a report about an incident that happened. And so whether you are the person that it happened to, or if you're a bystander and you see something, you can go online and you can report that. And then someone who has been identified as a wellness representative in the department and who is trained to be effectively a case manager will reach out to the person. They're called a complainant. That's the person who's been harmed in the incident. They will reach out, they'll gather more information, and then they will take action to rectify the situation. But it's very much a complainant-centered process. The idea is to provide education, ad hoc, peer-to-peer, informal education, with the goal being very transparent and making sure that the person who was harmed in the incident gets the end result that they're looking for.
So the reason why Teddy knows more about it than me is because we haven't fully launched it. When are we launching, Teddy? Or do
November, next month.
Next month, so right. So, and I saw the complainant training sessions pop up. So we're just launching it. We meant to have it launched earlier, but the progress got put on hold when we were surging here last spring. But I think, so the other way that I get a lot of information is right there, because residents come to talk to me, and my door is open. And I think one of the things that is I think I like to be approachable to address concerns, and we have a lot of faculty that really care deeply about the residents and their wellness and their well-being, and so we had a lot of people that were resources to the residents, but I thought we'd formalize it. So when I became chair, we created a group of faculty we called the Culture Crew. We tried to come up with a better name, but it's one of those things where we can't seem to. Someone suggested Culture Club, That was a band, that was like a group in the 80s. You guys probably don't know, but we stuck with the culture crew, and it has grown now. Started with 20 or 30 faculty, but it seems to be growing all the time. And remember, we only have 150 faculty, but these are people that the residents feel comfortable talking to. But we just wanted a formal reporting system in place so we could maintain a file, so that even if the complainant doesn't want action, then we will understand if there's patterns of behavior that we're not seeing that we need to intervene on. So that's the idea. I mean, I think, you can listen to me talk about our culture and, how much our faculty care about our residents, but, you shouldn't believe me. You should talk to our residents somehow. And that's what I would do.
Okay, and Scott is next.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Dimick, for that answer. So my question is, how is the University of Michigan innovating resident education?
Yeah, so I think I probably should start off by saying that resident education is incredibly important to us, right? Like it is, we pride ourselves on this. We don't have a ton of fellowships. We have a few here and there, but we are mostly focused on resident education, whether it is, I-6 programs or general surgery programs or the plastic integrated residency. Like we really focus on resident education. And we take great pride in helping you guys not only grow as surgeons, but grow as potential future leaders or faculty members. So it's really important to us. And I think that holding it as like and the chair before me was the same way. Like the residency programs are the kind of crown jewels of our department, and that's the way we believe. And so that's just a value that I think I should put out there. And part of that is that we take the time and we have structured our lives in such a way that we let you do the operations, right? It used to be like you don't come to join the faculty here unless you're comfortable operating from the non-surgeon side of the table, right? You do everything that you possibly can do, and we let you live in that zone of learning, right? Where you're kind of just at the edge of your abilities, and that obviously improves progressively over your time. And that once again is something that you can listen to me talk about, but if you need to talk to our residents to understand if that's true, I encourage you to do that, to reach out to them where you can. But we definitely, you get a lot of autonomy here, whether it's doing a Whipple and holding the right angle, right? Like, or, doing a lap splenectomy until something happens that you shouldn't be doing it anymore, right? We let you have autonomy. And so the innovations, so that's kind of a base. That's the base rate. It's been that way here for a long time. When I trained here, as chief resident, when you did a Whipple with the chair, which was Mike Mulholland, you never, the right angle never left your hand, right? That's the pride that we take in this. And innovation. So innovations. I think the big innovations, obviously, there's a lot of the I-6 the integrated. We were one of the first places to have an integrated plastic program. We were one of the first places to have an integrated vascular program, an integrated cardiac program. So we definitely are like to lead when it comes to education, and we're already leading, and we're one of the few programs that are piloting in general and plastic surgery, competency-based advancement programs, right? So I think that's one of the futures is you advance when you're ready. I personally think it's our job to make sure that you're ready, right? So that's the idea. It's not necessarily holding you back, but making sure that everyone's moving forward is kind of the idea there. We also have there's a feedback systems we're kind of piloting. There's a program called Simple. I don't know if you have seen the Simple program, but it's a program for intraoperative feedback that you get kind of in real time about how to improve. We really push our faculty to do a good job about briefing and debriefing, right? To kind of have a briefing before about what the learning goals are. And so we have a lot of standardized things around that. We study, we have a PhD educator, Gurjeet Sandhu, who studies autonomy and entrustment in the operating room. So you'll see we just did a randomized trial of ways to improve entrustment in the operating room and autonomy. So we're kind of always innovating like that. And I think we're probably one of the more innovative places, both in terms of the structure of training programs, but also what happens in the operating room. And we hold our faculty to a high standard in terms of teaching.
Awesome, thank you. That's very exciting to hear.
Okay, next up is Jackie. Jacqueline, did you have a question?
I did, thank you. Dr. Dimick, you've spoken a little bit about clinical and professional development opportunities at Michigan. Could you speak now more about how Michigan residents are supported on a personal level by faculty?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think it dovetails a little bit off of the prior question we talked about with the reporting system. And I think and also on just the culture of mentorship, right? I think that there are just a lot of informal, the faculty that we bring here and that we promote and the culture that we promote is one where our faculty are here because they want to mentor, right? They want to teach you in the operating room. They want to take a personal interest in you and help you achieve your goals. And I think the degree to which our faculty engage in the mentorship, I think is really, really unique. And so I think that part of it is cultural and supporting them. We have a lot of formal mentorship programs as well. One where we have this new one we call anastomosis, where we match up faculty with academic development time residents and then with medical students to create like a little surgical family kind of, and with senior and junior medical students. So it's kind of like, once again, we have, and so that's kind of builds a sense of home and like community. We have, we make all of our like research meetings open to pretty much everybody, especially in the virtual era. This is taken on even increased importance. Access to mentorship, access to opportunities because we're not bouncing off each other in the hallways quite as much, although on the clinical side we kind of are because we're still a little bit busier than even normal. So I think that we have formal programs. We have 2 vice chairs that I put in place when I became chair to oversee the formal programs. One is a vice chair of resident professional development, and that person is basically, you heard me mention the Michigan Promise that has 6 development programs. Recruitment, leadership development, innovation, entrepreneurship, workplace environment, and advancement. And all of those programs, there's like 2 or 3 programs in each one of those. They apply to the faculty and the residents. So the vice chair for resident development oversees that portfolio of programs for the residents, and it's for all the residency programs. And for example, we have a leadership development program for faculty and residents that you can do during your academic development time, but there's a tailored one for residents that are during all years that help you focus on resident-specific leadership things, not like running a health system someday, but running a team and leading a team and building a culture, a positive culture as you take charge of the team early in your 3rd-year residency or whenever it is when you start to become like a chief. So we do a lot of those things, and then we have a vice chair for resident mentorship I mentioned before, and that person is designed to help track you into the right programs. And this is a new thing that we just added this year, because we noticed that we have all these great programs, but not, there was no formal way of helping residents track into them. So by the time you get here, this will be fully operational. Because we had a few people, even though we have a rich environment, we were missing some people here and there. So we're going to create a system so nobody falls through the cracks.
Okay, Hannah, do you have a question?
Yes. Thank you so much for your response, Dr. Dimick. My question is, what are some of the opportunities available for mentorship at University of Michigan's residency program?
I think I answered,
Yes.
I kind of already answered that. Let me think. So let me see if there's anything else I can add to mentorship. As you can see, I'm like mentorship centered, so I just kind of pull that into almost every question. I just believe in the value of it. So I'll just review, right? Like I think we have a really strong mentorship culture. When you get here, you'll have an opportunity to work with it. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term launch teams. So a launch team is a team of individuals who help oversee your career journey. And we've used them during our academic development time years in, say, general surgery or vascular or plastics, which fall at different times. But we use launch teams and we basically convene them, which is like your primary mentor, a couple collaborators, maybe somebody who has the career phenotype that you aspire to in the department, to advise you. And they're really fantastic. But what we noticed was starting them during academic time is too late, right? You want to start right out of day one. So the process we have now will launch the team, will provide you with a small launch team, mentorship team, like right when you get here. And those people will probably be doing more kind of personal support and telling you not to like worry about anything except learning to be a doctor for the first 6 months. They'll be kind of a personal support team. But then over time, as you start to develop an interest in or think about exploring what you might do during your research time, we'll add to that group. And so by the time you get to academic development time, you'll have a full academic development time launch team, which if you're going to education research will be populated with educators, maybe someone from a different institution who is a phenotype that you may want to occupy someday, right? And then we can kind of formally make sure everybody has access to mentorship from day one. So I guess that's one thing I haven't talked about yet, which we can add to your question. But I think the bottom line to your question is a lot, right? And we're always innovating and thinking about new ways to like literally, this is the book that's like right on my that I read when I have a free moment during the day. So something I think about a lot, obviously. We also have a Michigan Mentorship Academy that Teddy and I run, which is an annual event. We had to cancel it this year because of this pesky virus, but we're reforming at it. Rather than having like a day-long virtual event, we are going to do, I forget what we're calling it, Mentorship Madness.
Mentorship Madness, yeah.
Mentorship Madness, where we're going to release like micro learning videos and things like that, interviews and stuff like that. So we're going to like put it out on social media over the course of a week instead of like making anybody sit down and watch it all in one day on Zoom.
Okay, thank you so much for your response. My second question is, how is the Department of Surgery ensuring diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on that a little bit as a key value. And so I'll talk about the Michigan Promise portfolio programs a little bit more. So as I mentioned, I think that so the Michigan Promise, first of all, the promise in the Michigan Promise is that if you come to Michigan, we'll develop you to your potential. That's the promise. And there's 6 domains in it, and they're focused on kind of the 2 pillars of excellence, developing you towards excellence, and equity and environment and inclusivity. And so those are because we believe that those 2 things are necessary for excellence, right? You can't have one without the other. And so each one kind of has a handful of supporting programs. On the excellence side, we have what we call advancement programs, which are the launch teams that I mentioned, mentorship to training and development mentorship academy is under there. Leadership development programs, I mentioned those under, and I think one of the key things is there, if you think about the way traditional networks work and traditional people have access to the best mentorship, it may not be equitable, right? And so we view things as launch teams as ensuring equal access to mentorship, right? And making sure that it doesn't follow traditional power, right? Like especially in male-dominated, white male-dominated fields like surgery, that we don't get, people just promoting people that look like them, right? So this breaks those patterns, and so I think the equity is even built into the excellence side, if that makes sense. And then there's the innovation piece, which is really just around making sure that we can have programs and opportunities for people whose primary interest is in biomedical engineering and innovation and those types of things. So those kind of all support excellence. And then on the diversity side, we have recruitment aim. So we have a department-wide faculty recruitment committee that is trained in relentlessly trained in implicit bias. It's representative of all the sections, of all the levels. Our residents actually sit on this and have an equal seat at the table, at the round table that we interview at. And we use standard behavior-based questions And then this committee weighs in heavily on every faculty decision that we hire. And I think it's had a tremendous effect on the caliber of the people that we hire. And guess what? It's improved diversity. When you have standards about where you post your jobs, who makes the decisions, it kind of breaks that cycle of where division chiefs hire their buddies, right? This kind of breaks that down and just makes us hire the best person, which guess what? Leads to more diversity. So that is recruitment, and obviously that functions at the resident level as well. All these like for you guys, it's really important to have diversity in the faculty, but also in the residency. And so I think that all these initiatives apply to both. And then environment, the one that we've really spent a lot of time in this year is our environment and culture. And I mentioned before, the main initiative there is around Culture Crew. And the Culture Crew has 5 working groups, which work on a lot of things. You guys might have heard of the Cultural Complications curriculum that's sort of going viral that was launched here. We did a webinar on that earlier this summer because everyone was calling us wanting to know about it. You can go to culturalcomplications.com and read a little bit about that. But that's a space where we use M&M to discuss insults to our culture. We have Walls Do Talk, so we are making sure that the wall space around the Department of Surgery and suites and the sections reflect the diversity that we're aspiring to have in all of our residency programs and faculties. The program on reporting that Teddy just described is one of the action projects. We also have an assessment one that we're about to launch a survey on to regularly assess our climate. And then actually there were 5 work groups. Now there's more. We keep adding to it, but we have our pipeline programs.
Hope, cultural complications, Walls Do Talk, assessment, hold on, they're over here. The training team, the mission and objectives. That's 6. I got it.
Yeah, I think I got most of those. And we have a pipeline program, Doctors of Tomorrow, which I kind of count as one of these as well. But it's a relationship with high schools in Detroit where we're working to help students. One of the questions is like, why do students from Detroit not come to Michigan Medical School? And so we're really working on enhancing that pipeline and have for a decade, which is really exciting because we work with kids starting in 9th grade and bring them in, and we have our first, because we've been doing 9 years now, our first group of 9th graders are starting to get into medical school. We've gotten the medical school here to guarantee admissions, and that just happens that should guarantee spots in the medical school. It just so happens that program was launched by surgeons. So a few of our surgeons and me and one of my partners raised the money from a donor to sponsor it. But it's read as a medical school program, but it just happens that it's run by Department of Surgery faculty. I think just showing once again that we have a really special group of faculty who care deeply about a lot of issues. Surgery is one of them, but I think there are a lot of other issues they care deeply about.
Our last guest.
So I think you can, one of the questions people ask all the time is, how do you view advocating for social justice? Is that something we should be quiet about? And the answer to that is absolutely not. Like we view that as, and you've probably heard me say this before, right? Like to me, enhancing social justice and improving equity, whether it's health equity or any equity, that's impact on the world that's positive. So if that's what your career vision is, then you'll find a place here. And you certainly don't have to hide it. It's a positive. All right, how many questions do we have?
We have one more question from Lindsay.
Lindsay, yep.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dimick. And I think you answered my previous question, so I'll just get to my next one. You bring up the topics of social equity, and I wanted to know, what is Michigan Surgery doing in its recruitment to ensure women and individuals of color are equally represented in your department?
Yeah, so I think I touched on that a bit with our recruitment committee. And I think, I'll go back to a few other things. So first of all, it's really important to us. And I think probably, so what I'll do is I'll go into a little bit of the background of why we launched this Michigan Promise. Right, like a few years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, everybody says they have diversity, equity, inclusion as a value. And like we wanted to look at the data and see how we actually did. And, you know, we weren't doing as well as we wanted to do. So we decided that we wanted to be intentional about that. And so that was the genesis of all of these Michigan Promise portfolio programs. And I think the recruitment committee is probably the best tool that we have. And we actually, you know, as scientists, we believe in data. So if you go to PubMed, you can actually look at the first few years of our program. We published the results in the AAMC journal. It's academic medicine. The first author is Leslie Dossett, and Erica Newman is another author on that, and she's the one who drafted the initial bylaws of the committee. And like as I mentioned, you can see in the data that our applicant pools became incredibly, you know, much more diverse, and our hires equally. You know, once you diversify applicant pools and you hire in an objective way, you increase diversity. So since the time of forming the committee, more than 50% of our hires have been women, and 33% of our hires have been underrepresented in medicine. So I think, you know, does that mean that we figured it out? No. You know, we're always trying to innovate. Like I said, we're at the beginning of this journey, not the end, but I think that those are yielding results already. I will say, you know, one of the most powerful stories that I like to tell is of Gifty Kwachki, who's like, you know, who's been here a few years, and she interviewed here because to kind of network at Michigan, but wasn't necessarily thinking about moving here until she went into the recruitment committee room and saw, you know, as a Black woman, people that looked like her around the table, and that there were residents around the table, that we were listening to their opinion, and that there was just a sense of intentionality to take objective hiring seriously and to thereby increase diversity. And so you know, so she came and joined the faculty here, but she tells the story much better than I do, and it's pretty powerful that just intentionality in this domain goes a long way. And she's now taking over our clerkship. She on her first year here, she won our student teaching award, is everybody's favorite faculty member, and you know, was the best candidate coming out, you know, on the job market that year in her specialty, like by far. Like we were really lucky to get her, and I don't think we would have gotten her if it wasn't for the intentionality of the committee and recruiting. So I think that's one thing that we're doing. On the resident side, I mean, I think you guys will see when you come through firsthand that we we'll ask you a lot of similar behavior-based questions, and every faculty member will have one. We'll have a different one, and we evaluate in a very objective way. We do. I think there are a couple questions here where we do holistic applicant review, right? Like we look at the whole file and we try and find the best applicants, right? Like board scores are like, tell us how good you are at multiple choice tests. They don't tell us whether or not you'll make an impact in academic surgery. So we try and give a holistic review.
And I have a quick follow-up question. You say that you look at the whole application and you have very intentional selection processes. Does this extend to faculty promotion and leadership within the medical departments?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, this is that classic question of like, you know, do we have a pipeline problem or a leaky pipeline, right? Are people kind of falling out or not getting promoted? And so I think you'll notice, and this is why I think that the programs we have to promote excellence are mostly around making sure that people advance equally and are promoted into leadership equally, right? And so I think that's where the equity comes in, is making sure that people are getting promoted and getting opportunities. So one of the domains is diversity in leadership, right? And so I think having representation amongst our senior leadership in the department, our vice chairs, is really important. And so we certainly have that.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's all the questions. We still have 15 minutes. Did you see? Have you guys been monitoring the chat? Is there any?
I have been. If Wendelin is still on, I'd like to promote Wendelin to ask her. She is still on. I'm going to promote.
Oh yeah, Wendelin Oslak.
Yeah. All right. Wendolyn, you've been promoted to panelist. Would you like to ask your question? Hi, Wendolyn.
Hi, thank you for promoting me to panelist. Thank you all for the really great questions. It touched on a lot of the things on my list, but one of the things I would like to hear about is kind of shifting back to the clinical training. I know that all the chiefs are going to be great, but I would love to hear more about like the frequency of SICU rotations and when residents get entrusted with doing lines and chest tubes. I know that kind of varies some from programs to program. So if you could touch on some of those details, I would really appreciate it.
You know, you're probably gonna ask me questions that I don't know the answer to. I think our residency program director probably is, because like certainly within general surgery, I have some idea of that because I went through it. But let's see. Is Brooke still here? Brooke would know this because she's a third-year resident. Can you promote Brooke?
Oh, okay, hold on 1 second, Brooke.
We'll find your answer.
Yeah.
Like specific details like that, well, my last experience with that was probably, hey, Brooke, are you here?
Hello. Yeah.
Brooke, can you answer that question?
Yeah. So in terms of lines, I put this in the chat too. You will be positively sick of lines by PGY2. At the end of PGY2, I was like trying to find interns to put in lines so that I could teach them and watch them suffer instead of doing it myself. In terms of chest tubes, I would say you don't do as many as an intern because the consult resident, who's a PGY2, is the one who does the trauma chest tubes, but you'll do them then. And then when you're a PGY3 on thoracic, you'll do a ton of chest tubes. So that's when you get most of those procedural experiences. And I would say PGY 1 and 2 year, it really is dependent on the service. You get plenty of ICU time. We had the option of doing an additional ICU month during our third year, and I chose not to because I got so much ICU time when I was on burns that I felt like I was like plenty set, honestly. But I would say that we do not lack any of that. And you get a lot of OR time on the more procedural rotations, like Blue, Dr. Dimick's service is our MIS and endocrine service, and a lot of ORs. It's very busy. Sometimes we're sending medical students to ORs, especially on Thursdays. So I think it's a very good experience overall.
Yeah, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. My question originally was about kind of qualities of residence or about DNI, but I don't want to make you repeat your great answer. So thank you.
Oh, I see. So you changed your answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brooke is a PGY 5 resident who has done 3 clinical years, so just is much more closer to those details than I am. For me, chest tubes and lines magically go in. I don't know how it happens, but they seem to have all the ones that they need. Yeah, so that's that. Yeah, and probably the newest rotation that we've added, which was a big hit, which Brooke probably didn't do, was our community surgery rotation. I just ran into our Sarah Schaefer today, who just is on her last day, and she didn't have any cases, so she was hanging out over here at the main hospital. But we bought 49% of a community hospital in a little town about 10 miles away, and we have some great surgeons there. And so she did 50. She's an HO2, and she did 50 cases over there. I go over there and operate a couple of days a month myself, and so she and I did a abdominal wall recon and a sleeve maybe and a gallbladder, but she did 50 major cases there as a 2. It's definitely the new favorite rotation, and the faculty there are just incredible teachers.
Dr. Dimick, there's a question in the chat. I'm going to promote Fatima. Question about helping residents continue their lab-based projects when they after their clinical time, and so this is something we've out, so I'm going to promote Fatima. Great. Yeah. Fatima, you're on as a panelist. Do you want to ask your question for us?
Fatima looks like she's on a clinical rotation somewhere.
Yes. We frozen?
She froze.
Mass General, I'm IMG. Yeah, I was wondering, after coming back to the clinic, is there any chance that someone can continue lab-based research, such like, for example, having fun to hire a technician or some opportunity like that?
That is an excellent question. So we are just now launching this year, within basic and translational sciences, a program to do just that. So up front, we have our Center for Basic and Translational Science is going to increase the didactics and the infrastructure and the training for students that want to go through that. But in addition, we're going to have a track, which is called what do we finally decide to call it? Aaron, you branded it. It's the Surgeon Scientist
Accelerator track.
What's that?
Surgeon Scientist Accelerator track.
Yeah, Surgeon Scientist Accelerator program. And how do you know that, Brooke? You know everything. So we just launched it. And so the deal is but the idea is just this, is to be able to apply for funding to hire a tech to start in kind of the second half of your last year to kind of work with you on your projects, and then to take them over and continue them, right? While you go back to clinical work. And then I pay for it. It's funded by the department. And the idea with that is, and so we're going to do our first one this year. And the idea with that is that there's this valley between when you go back to clinical work and then you have to start as an assistant professor. And keeping your work going will be really important to have preliminary data for KO8 or just the publications that you need, and having a tech do that. And oftentimes we pass them off to another resident, but the resident needs authorship and things like that. If you pass it off to a tech, you can maintain the authorship and the productivity or the primary authorship on the experiments and things like that. So that's the idea. And we'll be piloting it this year. So excited about that. So by the time we'll have all the details wrinkled out, by the time you guys get here.
And Ahmed had a good question about talent deployment. Unless Aaron, did you see anyone else? Are you trolling the questions?
Talent deployment.
Talent deployment. So I'm going to promote Ahmed. Let's see here. Give it a second. Ahmed, you're on with us as a panelist. Would you ask your question about talent deployment? Or I can read it from the chat. How about that? When talking about talent deployment, do you include residents in that initiative? Are there experiences where resident talent led to successful projects or initiatives?
So, when I speak about talent deployment or strategic deployment of talent, like the way that I like to formalize that is to say that, right, like there's not one mold for what it means to be an academic surgeon or to be a leader and a surgeon, right? There's as many molds as there are people, right? And so our goal isn't to shoehorn you into like what we think an academic surgeon should be. Our goal is to figure out what your unique talents and capabilities and career vision is, and then to provide the resources for you to achieve that vision, right? Like every resident will have a different portfolio and niche, and our job is to help enable that. And so the way I think about it is every individual I work with, whether it's a resident or a faculty, has a golden nugget in them that we have to help harvest, right? We have to help carve it out of you and bring forth into the world to add value. That's kind of the way I like to think about it. But yes, I mean, I could spend a long time giving you examples of the ridiculous achievements of our residents. I think probably one of the most impressive things when you interview is we publish the academic CVs of our residents, and we used to put them in a folder. We probably won't put them in a folder. You'll probably get in like a Dropbox or an email or something if we're doing virtual interviews. But like, take a look at those CVs. They will just like absolutely blow you away. I'm always blown away by the productivity and the residents. And I think a lot of times you'll see that one way, especially in a virtual world, is if you engage in social media. We have a pretty active Twitter presence, and we're always pushing out the portfolios and stories about our residents and faculty. You'll see a lot of residents featured there and their accomplishments, or just our faculty shouting out our residents who've published a paper or changed the world in some other way. Last year we had 2 residents on the Today Show. Did you guys all see that? For it was an International Women's Day. They had featured Sarah Schubeck and Ari Cantors. I say you should go like Google that and watch it. It's pretty amazing. They did a whole piece on their lactation policy that they put in place for nursing mothers who are clinical residents, and that went pretty viral. A lot of other places around the country implemented our policy, and then Today's Show found out about it actually from Erin's group, our communications group. Colleen Stone, who's a writer who works for us, wrote a really great blog post, which you can go read about it, and then it got picked up. It was in the New York Times actually, and they got picked up by the Today Show. So some of our residents were on the Today Show, which was awesome. They're doing stuff like that all the time. One of our residents, Andrew Ibrahim, was featured in Wired magazine talking about his pop-up ICU. Go read that portfolio if you want to know what it was like around our health system when Southeastern Michigan was getting crushed. Go read that portfolio. I forget what it was called. Any of you guys remember? It was written by Elliot Woods. So if you go to Wired magazine and look at Elliot Woods, you know, who's a one of those fancy journalism fellows here, the Knight Wallace fellow. Wrote a really nice piece on it. So yeah, so they're always doing things that just blow me away. Is that right, Brooke? Am I wrong about that? So Brooke, can you back me up? Tell them about. I mean, I know you're not going to like say it that I'm like, you know, but I'll put you on the spot here. What did I say? I asked residents about autonomy in the OR, right? And you know, getting to like do things in the OR, and then mentorship. Can you back me up on this?
Yes. Do you want me to tell stories, or do you want
please do.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. I remember you said autonomy in the OR. I love Michigan because I think that we have autonomy not just inside of the OR, but also outside of the OR with patient management. I can't imagine that I'm going to be a chief in a couple of years, but I think that it will happen. So I guess somehow you get to that point, but it's absolutely wonderful to watch our residents go from, like, I remember watching Callie, who's a current chief, be a 3, and she already knew what she was doing as a 3, but now she's like uber competent as a 5. They are absolutely able to operate well by themselves. They will operate with other residents, especially on our acute care surgery service. And normally the default is that the 5 takes the 3 through the case. I also TA'd a few cases as a 3 with either an intern or a 2 for simpler cases like APPEs, 1 coli, and that was really fun. What's really nice, just to talk a little bit more about that, Dr. Matthew Rawls is one of our pediatric surgeons, and I really wanted to TA this case with Ryan Howard, which was it was an appendicitis, and it was my first time TAing. So I took him through, everyone survived, it was great. And then Dr. Rawls called me after he left the OR when he was driving home to also give me a debrief about how well I TA'd. So everything is so deliberate here. We teach people how to teach. We teach people, we take care of patients. There's a lot of trust, but there's also a lot of support.
Yeah, I think it's progressive autonomy, but like you're not left alone. Like you always have a lot of support. And then mentorship. Is there a good mentorship here, Brooke? Are we like over mentoring you guys?
Over mentoring, maybe no. Our mentorship is absolutely amazing. And again, it's very deliberate. I think what I love about this place is that they really try to find what your strengths are and what your passions and really build on that, exactly like what Dr. Dimick was saying. They try to find that golden nugget and expand on that as much as possible. So a huge part of launch teams is not figuring out how to like just quote unquote make you successful, but it's trying to figure out what drives you so that they can put you in that direction, and you will become successful because you're doing what you care about, and they're going to give you the skills to be good at what you care about. So I think that is something that's really positive about this program. And then the team-based mentality, you don't get stuck into a siloed program where you're only with a single person. You share mentorship because somebody might be more like your life mentor, somebody might be more like your HSR mentor, and it's nice to be able to kind of go from person to person depending on what your needs are.
So now you don't have to ask a resident because you just did. Although it probably makes sense to ask them like in a setting when I'm not sitting here too. But Brooke is sort of our unofficial, or maybe official, residency recruitment advisor. She seems to be coordinating all of our webinars and everything. Great. I think we're done. What? What's that?
That's Aaron who's doing all the coordination.
Yeah, Aaron's doing all the, well, Aaron definitely. Aaron and Teddy definitely coordinate everything. Great. Well, I think that's it. I should let you guys go since you're probably all zoomed out from lives. But let me thank all of you, 341 people for joining in and listening to Michigan and giving me the chance to talk about my vision. I think it's pretty clear when I apply for this job and they ask me why do you want to be the chair of surgery at Michigan? And I would say, and several of you submitted this question. So the reason why I want to be a chair is because I love all three missions, and hopefully that comes across. And I love helping people find success in those three missions. Research, teaching, and patient care are all just central. Advancing those three things is just like why I get out of bed in the morning. Why Michigan? Michigan is because I love this place. I've been here my entire professional career, and I do think, I think it's a special place, and I think the people that are here are special. And I feel incredibly privileged to work with all of them. And I know that if you came here, you would feel the same way. So I want to thank all of you for joining us, but also all of the students who had the courage to come up here and keep me company on the screen so I didn't have to be alone up here. Thank you guys. Thank all of you. And thank you for submitting a question and coming up here to ask it for us and being interactive. And those of you who we elevated, thank you for quickly finding a place where you could turn your video on, I guess. Great. Well, thank you all. And I hope to see some of you interviewing at Michigan this year. Have a good night.
Thank you.